We now shift focus from the small and mid-sized business to look at micro business. Joining us is founder and CEO of Childs Capital, Donna Childs. Now, of course, Muhammad Yunus just won the Nobel Peace Prize for microloans. What is microfinance exactly? Can you give me a small definition of it?
Microfinance is the provision of small-scale financial services for people who are too poor to be in the formal financial system. So people who don't have collateral, people who don't have incomes, people who don't have credit ratings can get small loans in the developing world, $10, $15, $20.
Why is the microloans market growing, and why is it so difficult to service this market?
Well, the loans market is growing because there are about 4 billion people who live on less than $1 a day. So there's a real desire to try to provide services for these people so they can earn their way out of poverty. What my business does is we provide the infrastructure that supports this industry. So we're basically the backbone that enables them to hopefully achieve scale. And the challenge is we're providing infrastructure where none exists.
Typically, what's that look like? If you get a $15 loan to somebody with a tea stand, what else has to happen to make this business viable in the long term?
Well, right now there's not enough happening because the problem is when that $15 loan goes out, that borrower may suffer an accident and not have insurance and be able to repay the loan. Or the collection activities are complicated by the fact that it is prohibitively expensive to process many small loans rather than a few large ones, so the transaction costs are difficult. The technology challenges of reaching people, particularly in rural areas, and getting those loans out where you don't have a banking storefront, if you will. And so that's where we come in. We're providing some of the services that make that possible.
Who seems to be getting the majority of the loans?
Women in about 80% of the cases, the microfinance borrowers. In some cases widows, in some cases supporting husbands, and usually supporting children as well.
And why is that?
Well, women have been the ones who have been mostly marginalized from the financial services, so they're the ones who seem to have embraced this the most. So
the men are having an easier time getting loans through typical means, and this is a better option for them right now.
Well, women are more likely to be poor, unfortunately.
Once a particular market goes through a microfinance phase, does it then go into a small to medium business phase, and then are there other opportunities for loans and some other things happening?
Well, that's the difficulty, because once somebody graduates from microfinance, there isn't necessarily a commercial bank that's ready to take them on as a new customer, but the microfinance institution wants to continue to help the poor, so they kind of wind up in limbo. So presumably some institutions will emerge to fill the gap.
What would drive you to go into this unproven territory that you may or may not be successful in the long term?
During my career in Wall Street, I worked on the board of governors of Opportunity International, which is a not-for-profit organization that supports microfinance operations in 25 countries. So that's how I learned about it. And I recognize that good intentions aren't going to build microfinance. They're going to need some real business skill. And so that's why we have our niche.
And that's why you make a point of saying it's definitely not philanthropy. This has to be a business to succeed long term here.
It has to be a business because subsidies really don't help the poor people. Subsidies go to the richer and more powerful people who can extract those rents for themselves. That's why it has to be self-sustaining if it's to be effective.
Have you done an analysis or some research on where do you see the biggest growth coming from in microfinance over the next several years?
Asia, without a doubt, Asia. Growing population, strong work ethic, relatively loose regulatory regime that allows for growth, evolving mechanisms for respect of property rights. Africa's not quite there yet. I think Asia is going to be the hottest market. Many Americans don't realize this, but 50 million Chinese people became unemployed when the state-owned companies were privatized. And so part of the Chinese government's next economic plan calls for support of small and medium businesses. So a huge demand for microfinance services there.
And what is the future of microloans long term? Where do you see this headed?
Well, it depends. Right now there are only about 150 microfinancial institutions that are commercially viable or that could be commercially viable. So it depends on whether they can move from being in the realm of philanthropy to being in the realm of commercial success.